Henry, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. God bless you. Brother Jeff, I wanted to ask a quick question on um the slide whereby you line up Leviticus 23 with the edits of um that that way mark of 313, 321, and 330. My question is that when you line up Leviticus 23 with this line of, I mean, I think that's the Constantine, um,
Right.
tidying it with the, tidying when you tie that with Revelation chapter 11, because I quite remember, yeah, this one. Uh-huh. I quite remember when you were dealing with Leviticus 23, you add up with Revelation chapter 11, showing that the two witnesses, um, when they were ascended, there was a when first of all when the spirits came into them, there was a great earthquake, and then they were ascended to heaven. So you line it up, being the trumpets, the three will mark. The first one was the trumpet, ascension, and then the third one was the atonement. So
Right.
yeah. So my question here is, when you look at Revelation 11, and you wanted to, if you want to combine the the edit, which is the 313, and the 321 with 330, also with the Leviticus 23, where we have the trumpet, ascension, and atonement, how would Revelation chapter 11 line up, if I may say correctly? Because um I wanted to know, because when the spirit came into them, there was a great earthquake, of which you pointed to be the Sunday law, and then there was a voice that said, "The second woe is past, then the third is come quickly." And with that sequence, I don't know about how to say, with that sequence, will it be, because we know that the trumpet was the prediction of Nazareth, which will be the woe. So will this scenario that I brought out line up correctly? Because you can see the quick came before the second woe. The voice that the second the voice that was saying that the second woe is past, but the third will come quickly. Then so my question is, how would that Revelation 11, that scenario there, line up sequentially with um this three-way mark of Leviticus 23, and then the edit of the Constantine line of 250? I don't know if you get me.
Well, when I was doing sharing this, I realized I had those out of order. Okay. I'm down on the bottom of that same screen now. It's trumpets, and then 10 days after the Feast of Trumpets is the Day of Atonement. That's in the fall feast. Okay, so we're combining them with the spring feast, but we're also combining them with the Pentecostal season and the time of Christ. And in between the 10 days that separate the Feast of Trumpets and the Day of Atonement, 5 days in between, right in the middle, was Christ's ascension at
Mm,
the end of 40 days,
mm.
right?
Right, yeah.
Okay, so the the earthquake that you're talking about is the Sunday law.
Mm,
This is the Sunday law over here. Okay, that's the earthquake. And that's where the third woe cometh quickly. But before you get there, before you get to the earthquake of the Sunday law, you have to have the the resurrection and the ascension of the two witnesses. So what I'm saying is that when the first of these three, first is trumpets, second is the ascension. They're getting lifted up as an ensign now. Uh, and the third is the combination of divinity and humanity. And I've said all the way through, and I believe this is what is being taught directly in this structure, is that this is one way mark that has three elements to it, just like at the beginning, uh, death, burial, resurrection. So that isn't stretching anything. The only thing stretching it is no one's ever seen this arrangement before. So the Feast of Trumpets is announcing the, the the trumpets that get sounded in this history are the Jubilee trumpet down here and the third woe. And it's the Feast of Trumpets is the attack of Islam. And I'm putting it here in this illustration that begins the image of the beast testing period that ends with the attack of Islam, which is the third woe and the earthquake. I'm saying that this one is Nashville,
Okay.
and it's describing a period that I'll say is the image of the beast testing time. And the beginning of it is a strike of Islam, and the end of it is a strike of Islam. And the beginning of it is a edict, and the end of it is another edict, a Sunday law. So you begin lining them up, and
Okay.
you find that this structure has witnesses of beginning and ending over and over again. Um, so over here is what I was emphasizing here down here, bride ready. God's people have to be ready right here in order to give the warning to Nashville, but also in order to be able to say nay when this edict comes.
Okay.
So these three up here, this is where when Nashville is attacked, that the people, the worldly people, are going to turn on Adventism because Adventism is going to say, well, they knew, and they're going to get chastised by the people. And this is where the distinction is made right there at the Feast of Trumpets between a group of Adventists uh, that were small, but they had the Sabbath truth that Laodicean Seventh-day Adventists couldn't refute. That was the 2520. And the distinction is made between them because they have given the warning to Nashville, and the bulk of Seventh-day Adventism refused to do so. This is the argument of Peter. These men aren't drunk. These men had the new wine, and Laodicean Adventism was drunk with the old wine, and it was cut off from their mouth. This is the cutting off time period. So first thing is at the litmus test, if you gave the message of the trumpet, then you pass the litmus test. All that is entailed of that, and you are combined your humanity with divinity through the process of feeding on His word like no one's ever done before, and you begin to be lifted up in a cloud. Okay, and a cloud, if we can say this, is angels. It's a cloud of angels. When Christ came to the Father in Daniel chapter 7, he came with the clouds. And when he left, the angels represent a cloud of witnesses. So the reason that I'm saying that is because when Sister White describes the period of the proclamation of the midnight cry message in Millerite history, she said angels upon angels were sent. So this is a time period where they're lifted up
mm,
in front of mankind, heading towards the Sunday law. They're lifted up, and the messages that they're proclaiming at that time period are not complex, but they're many faceted. There's lots of them. So it's a process of getting lifted up. And the
yeah,
first step of identifying the faithful in that history is when the world recognizes the contrast between the Adventists that refused to give a warning, though they knew, and the Adventists that gave the warning. And that's the process that is illustrated by Elijah on Mount Carmel. There's a test that makes a distinction between the false prophets and Elijah, and that's what the story of Elijah typified in Millerite history when the Protestants became the daughters of Rome. So this binding off, sealing off time period of those 5 days between those three waymarks and Pentecost, the Sunday law, um, I'm suggesting that by that point, the 144,000, they have to be sealed, and they will have been like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they would have already settled into the truth, knowing they're going to say no to a Sunday law. So when that first edict comes, that's the end of the road. That probation is closed for the virgins now in advance of the Sunday law, just like it closes for the Republican horn in 2007 when Antiochus is between Rafi and Panium, but it closes before the Sunday law. And therefore, the Protestant horn and the Republican horn, they closed their probations just before the Sunday law. And for each of them, it was two steps. At 9/11, it was the Democrats till 2024. Then it's the Republicans until just before the Sunday law. And at 9/11, it was the Adventist Church until 2020. And now it's the Virgins until just before the Sunday law. And then at the Sunday law, the sixth kingdom of Bible prophecy ceases. Probation closes for Pharaoh, and he dies in the sea as the waters collapse around him.
okay. Thank you. God bless you. And also the last thing is, therefore, um, will it be okay? Or I know that the war of Panion, which is between United States and then Russia, will it be proper to place it between the um between 313 and 330, or as you said, it is three-way marks but one-way mark.
Yeah,
So
I see when I drew this structure up. I'm sorry for interrupting you, Brother Henry, but when I drew this structure up, I knew I blew it. I have raffia over here. Raffia should be in here, but I wasn't. What I was trying to do is emphasize the 10 and the 7. Paneum, it should have been over here too, inside these histories.
okay.
I was just trying to identify the years, the 10 and the 7. I think those are valid uh, symbols. I think we are supposed to use them.
Yeah.
The 10 and 7 together, 70, it's identifying the close of probation for the Republican horn, 70. 8, it's in the history that the priests who are represented as 8 are being made up, and even 10 times 8 is 80, because that human priesthood is 80 and the high priest is 81. 7 times 9, 63, Sunday law. Uh, I don't know what the 5 represents other than it's some footstep of the virgins, but I'm sure the Lord's going to reveal it as we move on through history. Other questions?
You, Larry?
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi.
So I had a question about the 250. I'm not familiar with that. Could you, maybe I missed when you explained it? I was looking at something else while you were talking.
What 250? Any 250?
Well, you said there was a prophecy of 250 at the very beginning of the study or at the sermon, I guess.
I can't,
The
I completely,
250 years.
I can't, there's so much information, I get it, but I've mentioned that already, but I'm going to do it again because it's important. There's three 250-year prophecies.
Okay. That's what
And
I just wasn't, I'm not familiar with it. So I just was wanting to get it.
well, you wouldn't be. This is my point. No one was familiar with chapters 11 through 24, 22, 11 through 22 in Genesis, Matthew, and Revelation. No one was familiar with the 2520s being the higher and lower nature. No
Right.
one was familiar with all these things that are opening up.
Hmm.
So this one is one of those that's once again no one was familiar with. But I went through I've went through it, proved it for myself. I'm comfortable with it. Okay, so for me, each man be fully persuaded in their own mind. I'm going to tell you what they are now, real quickly, um, and you can judge for yourself. There's three lines of 250 years. Um, this particular line, it is also a line of 2,300 years.
Right.
But this one is 250 years. And this 250 years goes to 313. And this 250 years goes to 2026. I'm not necessarily trying to line these up, line up on line. I'm just trying to explain the 250.
Right.
This one, there is a 22-year period that is isolated by prophecy that's worth putting in there. But in any case, here's why I shouldn't have went that far, but here's why this is, in my mind, important. Okay. The
Mhm.
the two and why it's a prophecy. I'm not saying that there's any thus saith the Lord about there will be 250 years from 457, or there's going to be 250 years that follows Nero, or that there's going to be 250 years in the history of the United States. But what I am saying is that the beginning and ending of every one of these lines that I'm talking, that I'm identifying a 250-year period within,
Mhm.
in every one of those, um, I can establish the beginning of the prophecy and the end of the prophecy with other related prophecies. So they establish it themselves. That's why I was saying taking time. 457 is a change of dispensation. It's a dispensational change. The Jews had been in captivity, and in the third decree in 457, their national sovereignty is restored. Dispensational change. The 2,300 days, it gets over here to 1844, dispensational change from holy place
Right.
to most holy place. So you have a dispensational change up here that is an internal line. It's about the work of atonement. Okay, you have the same dispensational change down here that starts the 250 years that ends between Raphia and Panium.
Hmm.
Now, this here, this creates 17 years. But the 250 years, it's taking you here in 207, where in history, if we hold to the history that the pioneers applied to verses 10 through 16, then what's happening is you're at the very end of the Seleucids ruling over Judea, and it's about Judea.
Hmm.
And in you're going to have a line that gets brought into this history that's the Maccabees, and the Maccabees their revolt is against the end of the Seleucid Empire. But what's happening here in between Raphia and Panium is the Seleucid Empire is coming to its conclusion, and in verse 16, Rome is rising. So you
Right.
have a change of dispensation. Okay,
Gotcha.
and so the history where the change of dispensation is marked, being 250 years after 457, is an external history. The internal history is about the Protestant horn. The external is about the Republican horn. 207 is the external history after 250 years of the Republican horn standing where his probation is about to close between a 10 and a 7. But he's in an established prophetic history. Okay, because Raphia and Panium are already established. He's in the history of verse 11 to verse 15. But we know right where he is. He's in the year 207 BC. So what I'm saying is that the ending of this 250 years that I'm applying to Cyrus to the three decrees in 457, there's a dispensational change that matches the dispensational change at the beginning. So you have an Alpha and Omega.
Yeah.
But because it's connected with another time prophecy that was internal, and that internal one also has a dispensational change at beginning and ending, it's locked in. It's I don't have a thus saith the Lord for 250 years, but the 250 years is locked into that history. And you know that it's this, what allows you to lock it into this history is you know that it takes place in the history of the eighth president. So when you take it to the eighth president, you get added layers upon this that is going to establish the waymarks in the history between Rafi and Panium. So that's one 250 line. And
So when you say what you just said, just real quick, you're saying because we're right in the middle of Rafi and Panium in 2025, that's why you're having Trump placed in verse, is it 14?
14.
Yeah.
This is the thing. This is really a cool observation if you can get it. What I'm going to say, if I can make it clear, is that it has to be Trump. He's the eighth that is of the seven. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but it can't be Trump because the pioneer understanding is verse 10 and the battle of verse 11 and the battle of verse 15. We're all the same guy. It was all by Antiochus.
Right.
But we know better. We know the first one in verse 10 was Reagan. And we know the last one's got to be Trump.
Mhm.
Okay, so you got your Alpha and Omega. There has to be a middle one in 2014. So it's been established at that level that in between Rafi and Panium is where Trump is standing in this history. And it's
Trump is doing something else too, right? Like he's cleaning up Obama's mess and he's cleaning up Biden's mess.
well, he's followed the really bad. Yeah, there are all kinds
And
of
by mess, I mean specifically with Panium or with Raffia or the borderland or why is the
yeah,
name not coming to me?
Ukraine.
Ukraine. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for.
So in this line up here at 457, you have two 17-year periods. Okay, you have the Battle of Raphia in 217. You have Antiochus standing in 207 after 250 years from 457. And you have the Battle of Panium in 200. And, oh, that's what it was. And Ptolemy, that wins the Battle of Panium, he died in 2004 BC, 4 years before 200. But he began to reign in 2021. So when you look at the King of the South's reign, it's 17 years,
Yeah.
and it overlaps this 17 years. And all I'm saying is that you have two witnesses of 17 years here, because when you get to here,
Right.
321 and 330, you have 17 years again.
Mm-hmm.
So that you have two witnesses to 17 years in conjunction with this 250-year time prophecy, and you have one 17-year period down here in connection with this 250-year time period.
Right.
These 250-year prophecies, they're tying each other together, as well as meeting the qualifications of
So
having the prophetic characteristics. And here's the
So it's
prophetic
holding-
characteristic. Go
it's
ahead.
holding also to the idea of Rapha and Panium being the hidden message of Daniel 11:40 to 41. These seem to be, and I'm following it. I think I'm following it. These are hidden, and they're being manifested. And this is Daniel chapter 1 being implemented in order to to survive Daniel chapter 2. You have to understand the hidden vision.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the point of this all. And but just so you asked a question, I want to finish
Sure.
this one off.
Sure,
It
sure,
was
yeah.
already in the screen, and I made the point. I don't care what the theologians say. At one level, the history of Nero's 250 years is the Church of Smyrna. It's the persecution.
Sure.
And the historians mark 64 with Nero, and it ended at the Edict of Milan 250 years later. Now, there isn't any 250-year prophecy that I know of, but this 313 begins the Church of Pergamus, the church of that Constantine is a symbol of compromise, the Church of Compromise, and this is Smyrna. So what I'm saying is this 250-year prophecy, it's part, it is Smyrna, and it's the part of Smyrna that is cause and effect with Pergamus. So you may not have a 250-year statement, but the history of Nero is the statement, and the history of Nero is the Church of Smyrna, which gives you another witness that this is a valid application of 250 years. That's the kind of logic that I'm using to say that these 250 years are all valid. And this one was in the time period of, let's say, the Medes and the Persians. So I'm going to put MP up here. And this was in the time of Rome. And this is in the history of the Medes and the Persians.
So when I
So
did
you
my
don't-
study on Smyrna, the way that I had it was 100.
Yeah,
Right.
that's why I say that.
Sure. I know. I'm saying, but I understand what you're pointing out. I'm following what you're saying based
Yeah.
on your logic here. So I just was wanting to.
It's a minor issue,
Right.
but I'm just curious, Jeff, why is it that you began the Nero's line in 64 rather than 63? I'm just assuming that that's when Nero became the emperor.
Yeah. That's why. But
Okay.
that's where historians mark him. And I just didn't have a problem with 250, but if you could do it exclusive or inclusive, and it
Yeah, I see that. That's good. All right, thank you.
Well, I was going to say though, I think that the reason people pick 100 is to do with the and you know, I'm sure there's more to it than this, but some sense of which the writing of Revelation was, right?
Yeah,
I think the
I'm not
last
so
of
sure
the
why they
apostles.
pick. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's the last of the apostles.
Right.
Yeah, but see that to me that's peripheral stuff that's important to know. I'm not going to downplay it. It's biblical history. It's good, but it's not really focusing in on the 250 because yeah, I mean you don't have to do that. Let's say that down here on this line, we're going to mark the year 100 as the beginning of the Church of Smyrna and 313 as the end.
Right.
Well, how many periods, prophetic periods, do you know of that have a beginning and ending waymark, if we're going to say this is Smyrna, that don't have a waymark somewhere in them that divides into two parts, part A and part B? So I'm not going to argue with someone that wants to say Smyrna started in 100 when John wrote the Revelation or the last, whatever. That's not a problem. I'm saying that the history of Nero and the persecution that he represents
Is within Smyrna anyway.
comes to a conclusion with Constantine. And it's just a different period, if we have to call it. It's period B in the history of Smyrna, but it's
We
still
also,
Smyrna.
I would also argue, we know that these timelines, they're not perfect. They overlap one another. There's room for this. There's completely room for this, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, if you were going to say Ephesus, well, down here instead of Smyrna, Ephesus, part A, it had love, and part B, it had lost its first love.
Right.
So that when did they lose their first love?
Yeah. So I wasn't trying to make an argument against it. I'm just simply
No, I know
stating,
you're not.
I'm trying to understand like how to present it, so people could not have to fight over.
When you figure
wrestling
it
numbers.
out, you let me know. This is
Okay. Anyway, finish your thoughts. I don't want to
oh,
interrupt.
no, I was answering you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I'm
I
just saying
there's
it's-
always an argument. People will always argue. So I don't think I'll ever do that.
and they're going to argue on this because this is the end of the road time period, and we this kind of light, you can only have a comfort, I believe, in this kind of light if you're familiar with it. I'm acknowledging right off the bat, I don't have any "Thus saith the Lord" for 250 years. But prophetically, I can see them as clearly as I can see the little book in the angel's hand of Revelation 18.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
I think you're
there.
making the compelling argument for it. I think that's the point. Is I believe that we're looking at part of this hidden message that is required in Daniel chapter 2. It's
all of this fits in there in the hidden history.
yeah.
That's what's so amazing to me. One of the things that's so amazing is just it. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but when you take Daniel chapter 2 and you recognize that if Daniel doesn't understand dreams and visions, he dies. I mean, it's just that simple. And if he didn't have the experience of Daniel chapter 1, which is biblical interpretation, how to eat the little book, if you don't know how to eat the little book, you can't see this. You have to be able to eat the little book. You have to have the biblical interpretation of line upon line. Alpha and Omega. Yeah.
When Clayton was sharing about this William Perkins from 1500s, and he has a book on prophecy, a little book, and you take the principles that he identifies about prophetic study, and you line them up with William Miller's rules. It's like he was the seed of the plant of William Miller. And he's in the history where they're hammering out how many books are going to go in the King James Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we know that King James is connected with Miller by 220 years.
Right.
So there's a story about the Bible, and this Perkins guy, he was basing his points of reference much on Jerome. Okay. And Miller and Sister White would refer to Jerome. I don't know much about Jerome, uh, but I know that he was in history before 538. So Catholicism may claim him as a hero, and in fact, he may have been a good guy for all I know, because that happens with Catholicism. But disregarding Jerome and taking the connection all the way back there, this guy Perkins, he's a a stepping stone in the story of the King James Bible that included Wycliffe, until the King James Bible, and then the Miller. And when you look at the principles that he's written about prophetic study and line them up with Miller, and then line them up with the principles that we're using now, then I mean, when it clicked on me that the Advent movement of 1840 to 44 was a glorious manifestation of the power of God, I've known that for years, but when it clicked on me that William Miller was the first reformer in history to be used by the Lord to accomplish a revival and reformation, the Advent movement, using both the Old and New Testament. Never been done before. Pentecost wasn't doing it. So to get William Miller where he could be used to do this revival was the work of the Lord in bringing the King James Bible into history. And these men along the way deliver it to Miller. And for the first time, a revival happens from both the Old and New Testament. But in order for it to happen, William Miller's got to have these rules. And this guy Perkins, he's already got the groundwork of those rules. And some of the things he's addressing are the things that we've been grappling with here in the recent weeks in this Perkins guy. So it's a development. All of that work was a development to the final test of the 144,000, which is a prophetic test. It's a mantle, it's a heritage that has come all the way down through history. It's profound when you start seeing it in those terms. This is the climax of it all, and those prophetic rules are absolute life and death. It's just are.
Yeah. All right.
Taryn,
So, I had a couple other questions or comments, if that's okay.
could we let someone else have questions? We can come back.
Okay.
Okay. Taryn, you've been unmuted. Do you have a question? Guess not. Pat?
Yeah, if we count 22 years back from 2026 in your line from 1776 to 2026, we land in 2014. Should that be marking the Ukrainian war there?
Well, what kind of math are you doing?
Oh, I'm not that great at math. I couldn't math my way out of
2004.
that. Oh, 2020. What?
Not good math.
2004.
2004 is when we received the 2520, though.
04. Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was trying to mark back 22 years from 2026 and land on something, but my brain doesn't work very well. But you're right. The 2520 came to light then in, I guess, 2004, 2005.
Somewhere I have that written down. Somewhere we went in and we took the time to go back in when we had the school and put in place when each of the doctrines that make up this message came to light, and we had it all nailed down. So I have it somewhere in notes, but the notes I have are just, they're hard to wade through. There's so many. It's discouraging. It's just crazy. I'll go look at notes that I was using 25, 30 years ago, and I'm using the same passages today, and I'm thinking, boy, you were really effective 30 years later, and you're still trying to teach that same idea. It's unreal how repetitious
Repetition is the secret of learning, I understand.
whatever.
And people ask me, well, Pippenger's got so much stuff, it's overwhelming. And I say, well, if it's any comfort to you, he does repeat himself a lot, so you get the same information over and over. And I think that's great. I think it's good. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, Brother Larry, you wanted to do your
There's
unless
two more.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to cut off Brother Jeremy. But I thought Pat was done. If you have other hands you know about that I don't, go for
There's
it,
two.
Jeremy.
Moises. I hope I said that right.
Moises.
Moises Moreno. You can ask your question.
I get too long-winded and people give up.
He just raised his hand not too long ago. Okay, maybe he stepped away from his computer. Shar?
Hello, happy Sabbath.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Hope you're well. Yeah, I had a few different questions. The first one was going back to the chart, or the line that you drew with the raffia.
All right, you watch him. Can you see him?
Can you go back again? I'll
Yeah,
let
I'm
you
going
know.
through them. You just watch. You tell me which
Yeah,
one.
I'll let you know which one. It may not have been. Yeah, that one. I'm sorry.
This one?
Go back one, please. The one prior to that. Yeah, this one. So at the end there, that the top line there, could you say that that could end with Leviticus 25? Because you started it out with Leviticus 23, and it makes sense in my mind about because it's Leviticus 23, 2300 days, and then the line ends with 2520, and I would have thought that Leviticus 25 could fit into that, to end that top line, but I could be mistaken, but that's what I was thinking while you were teaching that earlier. Is that possible?
Yeah. Well,
But
the 2300 is Daniel 8:14, and the 2520 is Leviticus 25 and 26. No doubt about it. All of those
right, yes,
come
sir.
to get lined up there as attributes of those waymarks.
Okay, and then
24 is a rebellion as well. It's the if you do this then you will die. Stone them.
yeah, I was just taking the first two digits, 2300, and then connecting it to the chapter, the
Yeah,
number of chapter.
I would think could only do that by showing the parallel meanings, which is there. But I don't want to try to make chapter 25 represented by 252:0.
Okay,
No, but I mean,
fine.
it's I'm still scared about handling numbers after July 18th. Okay, I gotta be a bit
Yeah,
hesitant.
you and I both. I'm not trying to turn it into something else. I was just that thought was in my head. And the other thing I was thinking was the three battles, Raphia, Panium, and Actium. Did you have a line for that? For those three battles, like a specific line? identifying those three battles and how they are relevant to our history today. I mean, bringing it to today and where we are, like in terms of present truth today, with those three battles. That's something I would like to see, and I guess I can do that myself.
Here's where it's on the screen in the
Yeah.
and what this screen isn't directly answering that question for you, but what
Uh-huh.
it's showing is the structure of the image of the beast testing time from 9/11 to the Sunday Law, that from 2020 to the Sunday Law is a fractal of that history. And in the middle line is this fractal right here. And
Uh-huh. Yes.
here I got Paneum coming to the Sunday Law and Actium going after the Sunday Law. And there's several witnesses that allow you to do that. And
Mhm.
even the last letters, IUM, on both of them are some kind of Greek um, verb
Terminology.
or something that's added to a noun. I don't know how to explain
Right.
it. So
Yes.
it turns it into pan, which is worldwide, and act. Okay, so
Hmm.
the act is the Sunday Law. Now it's going to the world. There's all kinds of crossovers here between these two battles. One's the sea, one's the earth. So that they're the same battle. It
Okay.
begins while the United States is still the Sixth Kingdom, and then it continues on into the history of the Sunday Law crisis for the world. So you want to know where we're at in relation to that?
Yes, sir. Yeah, so we're
Okay.
somewhere between Raffi and Panium, that's my understanding.
Yeah, Raffia began over here, 2014, and
Mhm.
the Sunday Law is going to be Panium and Actium. That's where they join. So where we're at today is we're on the verge of 313, the edict that begins the series of Sunday laws. The first Sunday law arrives in 321. So that's where we're at. But we have to be sealed before then. So we're on the verge of an act of some kind of decree, an edict
Yes, sir.
that is contains the characteristics of the Sunday law and begins this image of the beast testing time. And we are between Raphia over here and Paneum up here. Um,
Mhm.
but we're at 2023. The temple has begun being erected in 2024. The first test of the foundation, 2025. The capstone test is underway. So if this is 2025 and 313 is ahead,
That'll be 26 where we're currently
yeah,
in.
yeah. What I'm saying is, do you put
Oh,
not
okay.
you didn't interrupt me, I interrupted you. What I'm thinking about when we talk about 2026 in terms of the 250-year prophecy, it's July 4th, 2026.
Uh-huh.
So, but
Right.
it'd be classic for me to guess. My guess would be, that's all it would be is a guess. And I shouldn't do it, but I'll tell you what my guess would be is that at July 4th, 2020, and partly because that 2026, partly because this is the way Trump is there's going to be some kind of executive order which
Hmm.
has been typified by the Patriot Act. It's been
Yeah,
typified by the Blair Bills
that's
in 1888, and it's been typified by the Edict of
I see
Milan.
that coming. Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
But I could be wrong. Maybe July 4th is over here. Uh,
Yeah, it's
but what I'm saying, I don't think we're going to be wrong. That's the thing is
mhm.
I think we have been given enough structures to bring together and line up on line that Christ is in the process of formulating a message. The message, I tell you what, whether people understand it or not, I can take personally, I can have comfort, not through my human strength, but hopefully with the aid of the Holy Spirit. I can take the Time of the End magazine, and go before any of the theologians in Adventism that want to tell me why it's wrong, and I can prove to them why they're wrong. Okay,
Mhm.
that magazine that I recently went back and looked at, it's still just as sound today as it was 30 years ago. And there's things in it now that we see, that I see, that I didn't even know I was writing back then that
Mhm.
address the days that we're living in. So my point is this, the what's happening now was typified by 1996 in the Time of the End magazine, and it was
Yeah.
typified by William Miller in 1831. So the
Yes.
message that we're going to put together, it's going to be, it's not going to be incomplete. It's going to be thorough.
Amen.
It's going to be, uh, I don't want to say this
Sound.
in a negative way, but it's going to be in your face. It's going to be real clear
Hmm.
about what we think is about to happen, so much so that it gets us lifted up into the attention of the world.
Amen.
So that's what I believe he's doing right now. For me personally, as a human being, it's kind of scary that I wish there was a team of people doing this where where
Yeah. It's
where you
short-handed.
it's not the shorthanded. It's the it's, sometimes I'll look at things and I'll see them for the first
The
time and I'll think,
laborers are
wow.
few.
And I'm wondering, am I imagining this? Is is senility settling in or whatever? But, but no, it's real. It's scary.
Mm. The harvest is great. The laborers are few. But yeah, it's a great work. And I know I have a part to play. I just would like to know exactly how to do it. um, so I don't want to kind of mess up or anything. And I know we in this movement we went astray, but I believe that the Lord allowed that diversion to happen for a reason, definitely for a good reason. So
No, I agree with you, but I'm going to say disagree to make a point. I really believe that July 18th, 2020 is the key. I've written it. Not that that matters that I've written it, but I've even written this. See, Sister White is clear that in 1844 she says the sanctuary was the key that unlocked the disappointment and all the messages associated with 1844. But she calls the understanding of the sanctuary the key, okay, to unlock the disappointment. And at the end, the disappointment is the key that unlocks the message. 2020 is the 2020 vision. When you see that that is the beginning of the tarrying time in the parable of the 10 virgins, one thing it tells you is if a Seventh-day Adventist hasn't suffered that disappointment, they're not in the parable of the 10 virgins. So it gives you a clarity about who you are in terms of the message, but it also gives you a clarity about the line of God's people, his covenant people that go through these lines of history that are being opened up that you have to have. You have to understand that at that disappointment, the 3.5 days of being dead in the street is the dead dry bones of Ezekiel 37, and you have to believe it's 3.5 days. And you have to know the 3.5 days is a symbol of 1260. And you have to know that at the end of 1260 years in 1798, the book of Daniel was unsealed. Therefore, on December 31st, 2023, there was an unsealing. And the unsealing that takes place at the end of time, just before probation close, is the revelation of Jesus Christ. And that's what's happened since 2023. And the key to seeing that is the first disappointment, because it allows you to see the tearing time in the 1260 years. It allows you to see the unsealing and bring all the other unsealings into play. The disappointment is the key that opens up our message, and our message is the message of the sanctuary. But for the Millerites, the key to open up and explain the disappointment was the sanctuary. Our disappointment is what explains the sanctuary. And the sanctuary is the temple of the 144,000 joined with the temple of the most holy place.
Amen.
It's the key. It's the 2020 vision.
Amen.
And Donald Trump gets murdered in the same year.
Right.
Republican horn, Protestant horn, everything we were saying just gets tied together.
But if that hadn't have happened, then we would not have been redirected back to this message, the message that you were given specifically, that God chose yourself to give to his people, was Daniel 11:40 through 45.
It all
And
comes
those are the
tumbling
last
down.
6 verses before the close of probation. So, probation will be the next step or waymark after the Sunday law, which is soon coming. And so, yeah.
Let me add something. When you talk about probation closing, is when we formalize our
God's people.
message, we have William Miller formalizing the message in 1831, and then we have Josiah Litch formalizing a corrected message, and Samuel Snow formalizing a corrected message. So we have 3 witnesses about formalizing this message. And I lost what I was going to say.
The close of probation.
Yeah, oh, that's it. Thank you. The Josiah Litch is about Islam. It's the external. And Samuel Snow is about the parable of the 10 virgins. It's internal. And the parable of the 10 virgins is about the closed door. And what I'm saying is I can see now in these lines, what these lines are doing, among other things, is they're showing that the door closed. I have a hunch that some people here on Zoom, they hear me say this, but they're not sure if they believe it or not. But in 2020, the door closed on the Democratic Party and on the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Okay, it's going to close more at the Sunday law, but that's the story of ancient Israel. They closed their door at the birth of Christ. They closed the door at his baptism. They closed their door at his death. They closed his door at the stoning of Stephen. And my point is the message of Samuel Snow that we have to correct is the midnight cry message that we have to fix. And the midnight cry message is about the closed door. And what is opened up now is we can see the closed door on the Democrats, the Republicans, the Protestant horn. We can see the closed door on the United States as the beast that has a Protestant and a Republican horn. And we can see the closed door on the Protestant horn of Adventism in 2020, and then the closed door of these virgins. So our message, the way it's structured, just to get to the Sunday law in the United States, we understand that there are 5 closed doors. 5 closed doors is part of our message. And it's being explained here by these lines. And then there's still closed doors that come in the testing time after the Sunday law until human probation closes. my point is this, is that we're supposed to be correcting and formalizing this message of the Midnight Cry. And the Midnight Cry in Millerite history was about the parable, which was about the closed doors. And we have been given the light on the closing doors in the judgment of the living. That is the Midnight Cry message. And we've been given light on Islam, the external message. And both of them need to be corrected, or they need to be formalized.
Amen.
And anyway.
Brother Jeff, just one last question. If you could just summarize or kind of, just in one word, just kind of minimize into one word what this message is, like what the message is. What would you, in one word, how would you kind of answer that
Midnight Cry.
Midnight Cry message? Okay. Thank you.
The
Appreciate
true
it.
Midnight Cry.
Have a blessed rest of your day.
Moises?
Moises?
Happy Sabbath, brothers and sisters.
How do you
Can you
pronounce
guys,
your name, brother?
Moises? Moises is fine.
Okay.
Moises or Moses or I don't know. But in Spanish it's Moises. So
All right.
yeah, that's how. Yeah, yes. I don't know if you mind if I can go. I can ask a question a little out of topic. Is that
Okay.
fine?
Okay, we'll
I
see.
mean, it's a little bit related because it's about the trumpets, but yeah, it's not the same topic that you guys are touching. And I think it's a dumb question for you guys, but I'm giving these studies over here in our a group that we have over here, but I know that they're gonna come up with this question sooner or later, and I wanna be ready for it. I kind of have like an idea what is the answer, but I wanna know what is your answer, brother Jeff. Uh, in regarding the trumpets, when we read Revelations 8, and it begins with the seventh seal. How can we explain? What is a better way to explain that even though that the trumpet seems that are beginning to sound in the seventh seal, they are historical. They are historical beginning. I mean, since Christ ascended to the heaven, to the sanctuary, and it began to sound with the with the trumpets that it hit Rome. How can you explain that that they are not really sounding at the seventh seal, but they're sounding. They are like a parallel with the seals as well. How can you explain that? I don't know if I
Well,
make myself.
the last three trumpets are the three woes. So the seventh trumpet is the third woe, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so in 1844, the seventh trumpet began to sound, but the sounding of the seventh trumpet in 1844 was to escalate to the second coming of Christ. But it didn't, because there was rebellion in Adventism in 1863. So the trumpet quit sounding. Okay, it went silent, but it was two trumpets. It was two trumpets, because on October 22nd, 1844, they were to sound the Jubilee trumpet. So the seventh trumpet is about the mystery of God in you. It's the internal, and the Jubilee trumpet is the 2520. It's the external. So those two trumpets, they began to sound, but because of rebellion in 1863, there was a 126-year period of wandering in the wilderness. And those trumpets began to sound on October 22nd, 1844, with the arrival of the third angel. And the third angel arrived again in 1989. We've went through this in the Zoom meetings often. But where we place the arrival of the third angel in terms of repeating the sounding of the seventh trumpet, that is in verse 7 of chapter 10 of Revelation, 6 or 7, is at 9/11. At 9/11, the seventh trumpet began to sound, and it was the third woe. And the third woe hit the United States. It hit one airplane went into Earth because it's the Earth beast, and one hit the symbol of military strength. That's the horsemen and chariots, and the other hit the symbol of economic strength, the Twin Towers. So a 9/11, the seventh trumpet, the third woe began to sound again. So the role of the opening of the seventh seal in Revelation 8, verse 1, is the illustration of the outpouring of the Spirit in the history of the sealing of the 144,000, and the outpouring of the Spirit in the history of the 144,000 began at 9/11, right where that seventh trumpet arrived. And it is a process of finishing the work of Christ in you, finishing the mystery of godliness. In the days of the sounding of the seventh trumpet, the mystery of God will be finished. Okay, so it's a process. So the full outpouring the midnight cry outpouring that leads into the Sunday law that turns into the loud cry outpouring. That history is when the seventh seal is being opened up, and the seventh seal began to be opened up on December 31st, 2023. But the story of the seals is that they're progressive. The pioneers put the unsealing in Daniel 12 together with the line of the tribe of Judah, removing the seals from the book one at a time. So the seventh seal begins to be opened on December 31st, 2023, during the history that the seventh trumpet is already sounding beginning at 9/11, and it's identifying an increase of knowledge from 2023 onward as the seventh seal is removed. But I'm uncertain if I'm really answering your question. So tell me if I got close.
Yeah, at the end, it did. Well, all the context that you gave help. It's because, well, let me read it to you really quick. When we read Revelation 8, it says, "And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of a half an hour. And I saw the seven angels which stood before God, and to them were given seven trumpets." So when you read these two verses, it gives you the impression that the seven trumpets, I mean, beginning with the first trumpet, that it began to sound at the opening of the seventh seal, which you just said that it began to sound on December 2023. Um, so if we read this, I understand that the first trumpet begins to sound after December 2023, because the seven trumpets were given to the angels after the seventh seal was open. So that was my question. That how
Well,
can you
let
explain
me
that?
respond to you.
Yes.
I would say that you have a natural break in verse 5. And the natural break is an expression that you find I think four times in Revelation. And what I mean by that, you see voices, thunderings, lightnings, and earthquakes. So it's always a little variable, but that's at one level, that's saying there's a break. And then verse 6 says, and the seven angels which had the seven trumpets prepared themselves to sound. Okay, so I'm not denying that those seven angels are the seven angels with seven trumpets in verse 2. But what I'm saying is, as you go down through the history of these trumpet angels from verse 6 onward and line up all seven of them with the seven vials in Revelation 16, you realize that the history that fulfilled the seven trumpets, um, the first four trumpets bringing down Western Rome, the next two trumpets, the first two woes, dealing with papal Rome's history, and then the seventh trumpet, the third woe, coming into our history at 9/11. That those are typifying they're the same angels that are going to pour out the seven vials. Okay, and in chapter there's the woe. There's a place in here where I think it must be chapter 9, where it's summarizing the work of the trumpets, and it calls them plagues, even though those verses are applied to the history of Rome. And by these three, for the okay, it's verse 20. And the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues. Okay, now, the pioneer understanding of 8 and 9 is these aren't plagues, these are judgments against Rome, pagan Rome and papal Rome. But they run parallel to the seven last plagues. So the place that I see these plagues in connection with the unsealing of the seventh seal is in the context of imminent judgment, like the Elijah message. I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Or Revelation 22:10. Seal not the sayings of the prophecy of this book, for the time is at hand. And he that is unjust, let him be unjust still. So just before probation closes, and probation's closed brings with it the seven last plagues. Just before that, these trumpet angels are standing in the history of Western Rome and papal Rome, but the seventh, the third woe, is standing in the history of modern Rome. That's us. And all of those trumpets get repeated in the external illustration of judgments of the seventh trumpet. But when human probation closes, then all those seven trumpets get repeated in the seven last plagues. So I don't tie the opening of the seventh seal in as closely as it seems that you're doing. I'm seeing those seven trumpets there as a background that this is a message that is about to be poured out because the fire is taken from off the altar and it's cast to the earth. And at Pentecost, tongues of fire appeared upon their heads. So this fire is a message that is given to God's people just before probation closes. And I don't try to see seven trumpets following the opening of the seventh seal. I think there's a natural break there that allows you to see that the trumpets are
Oh,
being
okay.
used as a different symbol.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, I see it. And I kind of I understand it like that. Yeah, I wanted to have like an uh to be convinced, that it was like that, the answer. So you're saying that the natural break on verse 5 is kind of like a parenthesis that can throw you either back in history or in the future with the bells. It's
Well, what
kind of
I'm
like
saying
the
about
answer,
verse
no?
5 is if you go into Revelation, you're going to see it talk about voices, thundering, lightnings, and earthquakes, but it changes. Every time it's expressed, it's got a little bit of a nuance. And we went through in some articles and we dealt with this, and there's a development. Wherever it says there were voices, thunders, lightnings, and earthquakes, or any variation of that in the book of Revelation, and you check it out. I don't remember if it's 3 or 4 right now. I'm sorry. But it shows a progression of thought that runs through the history of Revelation, but it's by the fact that it's there 3 or 4 times, it's a sound prophetic break. It's a sound prophetic break between those thoughts and the trumpets. And there's a line when we did it, we went through and we showed what the voices were, what the thunderings were, what the lightnings were, what the earthquake is. And you know, I forget now. It's a long day. Like, but they're in the articles. If you know how to search the articles. We've dealt with this, is what I'm saying, more than once in the article since 23. Where are you from, brother? You gone?
Looks like Moises is gone. All right, Larry.
Hello. So I was going to make a comment about when you were talking about the relationship between Reagan and
Trump.
Pope John Paul II being a closed, a secret alliance.
Yes.
And then now Trump with Leo being an open alliance. And one of the things that I'm sure everyone has recognized is Leo is the lion, which obviously would reference back to Daniel 7:4, and that they're taking on this moniker of Babylon. And we should expect to see that being an open alliance. So I was just going to make that comment, add to what you had said there.
I agree.
And then I also noticed exactly what Shamila had noticed about Leviticus 23. And I had noticed also that perhaps it's 23, 24, and 25, how we have the 3 lines, and 25 being literally when you start off, it's talking about the land rest. And we know also that when you do the way that it's spoken of, the land rest is spoken of there, it's the same way that it is on the chart. When William Miller did it, he did the 25-20 in a very unusual way. I'm sure you're aware of this, but he does it, 49/7, then multiply 7 by 12. He has the 84 months, and then he does 30 days, and he gets the total that way, which is directly referencing from Leviticus 25. And so it would make sense to have the 25-20 represented by the land rest, which is what you were pointing to in that particular topic when you were talking about it, that you have the Sabbath rest in 23 at the beginning of 23 and the end of 23. But I did see the same thing Shamila said. And then my comment when she was talking about it was, what I noticed about 24 is that it seems to be that if we're looking at it in the line of truth anyway, you would have a negative or a rebellion in the middle. And that rebellion seems to be exactly what verse or chapter 24 would be talking about. If you rebel against the Sabbath rest, then you'll be stoned and so on. And it goes through all these stonings. But also the thing that I had noticed about 25 is the 25-20 is 1856. And the way I've been understanding that is that it is the Sabbath being proclaimed more fully. Ellen White talks about that, the Sabbath be proclaimed more fully. And until I came into this movement, I was like, how do you proclaim the Sabbath more fully? It doesn't make any sense to me. When I realized that there's the 2520 and the Jubilee for that matter, there's a whole lot more to say about the Sabbath than what Adventism generally has to say about it. So I was just going to make that as well,
agree.
comment on that. And then the other thing was you were talking about, and in association with that is the incarnation being the 2520. And how we understand the incarnation, especially how you've brought it out here recently with the incarnation being the nature of man, and the understanding of the nature of man. And I was thinking about this because I don't know if everyone knows this or not, but there's a great shaking going on up in Canada over the Godhead. And they're doing a bunch of studies on the Godhead. And they have a big group of people up there who have accepted the anti-Trinitarian doctrine that they're wrestling with in the movement up there. And one of the things that I've heard is that they're talking about it in association with spiritualism. And so it seems to me that if we don't have this proper understanding of the incarnation or the nature of man, there's a very strong possibility to be drawn into this error, amongst many errors, I suspect, but that one seems to be very prevalent for some reason. So I was just going to point that out as well.
It's just with people that we used to interact with.
Yes.
Yeah, I know some other people that have fallen into that.
Yeah, it's tons of people. It's a big thing right now. It's growing rapidly.
It was always the biggest one.
Yeah,
when the Seventh-day Adventist Reform movement began in World War I, they went out with a burden to promote that because of not standing up against the draft, that was the closed door on the Adventist Church, and they're the new Adventist Church, and they maintained some pioneer positions that had been already worked out in a different direction, and they become zealot for it. And then they've divided a bunch, but they divided into two main Seventh-day Adventist Reformed denominations, both headquarters located in Germany, but they spread out all over the world. So anywhere we ever traveled with the world, when you find Adventists that have any kind of sympathy for the pioneers, then you're going to find some of them that are wrapped up into that pioneer position, as opposed to the lunar Sabbath and feast days and all these other fanaticisms that permeate Adventism. And so the people that were in this message, I think they have an inclination to fall off on that side of the road, because that's the one thing about the anti-Trinitarians, that they always were laboring to get us to come be on their side of things. It's because they had but they had an appreciation for the pioneer understanding of things. But it was warped.
Yeah.
It really was. There's a guy that I used to work closely with. He's the guy that put together, formatted the Time of the End magazine, and without any. He didn't do anything on purpose, but it ended up being called the Time of the End magazine because that's how he formatted it. And he did it during the time of COVID. He did a video presentation, and I don't have much regard for what he was saying about himself, but he was recommending this presentation from this guy in Australia. And this guy in Australia was an anti-Trinitarian, and he was a young guy, and he went through, and I had heard most of the arguments. I've been involved with most of the arguments, but I never really seen anyone seem to put them all together in one basket, and he did it. And it's the only reason I'm saying it is just sad that if you have an inclination to be supportive of the pioneers, you're susceptible to getting drawn into that nonsense. But that's where we started in these articles. There was some things some claims I made about Revelation chapter 1, whether you remember it or not, being the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit all being there in that chapter, in agreement with them all being in Genesis chapter 1, and
Mhm.
on and on. I was really
Yeah.
led to hit on that, and if if you if you can't see that prophetically, then whatever the purpose of the Holy Spirit is, you don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great deception that's going on
It's
amongst.
spiritualism.
Yeah, I mean I agree with you. I mean I think that's exactly why the nature of man is such a fundamental understanding. Because if we don't understand the nature of man, we could never understand the nature of Christ. And this idea of Christ, well, whatever, you know, the whole thing about the arguments what they make. Um, but yeah, so I feel like this understanding of the incarnation is a huge thing right now. So
Yeah, I don't think it's an issue for people that are going to fight against it, and it's nice that we understand it correctly. I hope, but as much as we can. I'm sure
amen.
there's much more we'll learn about it through eternity, because she says that it's a mystery.
Yeah.
But the 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 incarnation as a prophetic symbol, once you see it, once you can see passages where it's illustrating the combination with divinity and humanity,
Mhm.
it brings another witness into the prophetic passage you're looking at. It becomes one of the keys, like Alpha and Omega or the word truth. Uh, you just begin seeing it all over the place, and you begin to understand that it is the. I mean, this is hard to say. I mean, at one level, kind of a prophetic test, so to speak.
Yeah.
From what we understand, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the Alpha, and the 22nd is the Omega, and the Omega is always stronger. What that means to me is that the 2520 is stronger than the 2300, or that the seventh day Sabbath, the seventh year Sabbath is stronger than the seventh day Sabbath. Now, my terms of strength is prophetic. I'm not saying either one of them is
Right.
lesser, but the 2520 is it's more significant at some levels. That's why the Adventists don't like us, because they can't refute the Sabbath. It's not because they can't refute the seventh day Sabbath. They're not trying to refute that with
Right.
us. It's the 2520. They
Yeah.
can't refute it. So it becomes the issue where they jump ship in 1856 through 1863, and it becomes their death knell at the end, beginning and end. And it's dead in
It's
the
in
wilderness
alignment
after
with
40 years.
it's in alignment with John Harvey Kellogg's Alpha of Apostasy
Oh, yeah.
and the Omega of Apostasy. It's this idea of not understanding the nature of how God functions. Not that it's the mystery of godliness. So it's a mystery. It's a genuine mystery. I've heard you say this. It's not like a mystery novel. It's an actual mystery. It's not understandable. But what we've been given, we're supposed to understand. And so, we're responsible for that portion that we can't understand. And the nature of man study and how we understand the 2520 and the higher and lower powers and just the whole study on the nature of man. It's just such a crucial thing for us to wrap our minds around so that we don't fall into these deceptions. One of the things anyway. But yeah, so that was,
Strong delusion.
yes. Yeah. And I'll leave it there. That was, I think, I had a few other things, but I think I'll sufficiently figure those out. Thank you for your time, Jeff. Appreciate the lecture and your willingness.
And John?
Happy Sabbath, Brother Jeff, and thank you for this powerful message. Dealing with last Sabbath just a little bit, when we were dealing with Daniel 11, verse 16, and the two lines there with the verse 16 at the end of the first line, starting with 10 and ending with a second line starting again with verse 16 this time, and then ending with verse 22. I had some questions about that, but brought them up last night, and it made sense to me. And I just want to thank you for touching on that again this Sabbath. What I was um, dealing with last night was, it looked like to me, and you pointed that out, that verse 16, it's an alpha and omega in terms of dealing with the Sunday law, and it transitions, or another word for it is dispensational, uh, from a national Sunday law, and then on, which is the, uh, at that point, I guess it's the omega, no, alpha, I guess, alpha, right, and then dealing with the Sunday law, and then it's dealing with the omega Sunday law when we go to a worldwide Sunday law. And of course, verse 16 would also denote going from Panium to Actium, to wars there. And it's interesting. And I have a question. Like, my question is, Panium would be emphasizing religious conflict, uh, the truth versus false religion, and Actium emphasizes political statecraft conflict. I mean, does that make
Yeah.
sense when you say?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
No, I'm saying yes. That's how I
Oh,
understand it.
amen, amen. Okay, and so yeah, I was really wanted to thank you for bringing that up, because I've never had a good understanding of how Actium comes into play here. Um, I'm based on this now, it really does look like, and I know we've tossed this around, struggled with it, never really defined it. I don't know that we're going to define it much more today, but I just wanted to bring up that I think it shows that we are going to be dealing with both those Sunday laws, the national as it comes to a head, and at some point, the other countries will start adopting the Sunday law, whether it be a worldwide Sunday law at that point, but they're going to follow suit. And it may not, you know, be obvious that we're heading into a real arm twisting situation with regard to the world and dealing with Sunday law. I think a lot of them are going to just adopt it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, well, the the role of the United States, uh, originally, the purpose was as a lamb, and it ends up speaking as a dragon. So there is no other country on planet Earth that has been given that role. And what I'm saying is they were the ones that were to guard against the Sunday law. Therefore, when you get a Sunday law in the United States, all the South American countries, they're going to take a 24 hours to be following suit because they're already Catholic. They're already into it. There'll be other, Muslim countries or Buddhists or whatever that may resist, but you're going into such a tremendous crisis at that point in time. You look at the way that President Trump is twisting arms right now. If he wants to have them do something like that, they're going to do it. It's just what the Bible says. Verses 12 through 18 of Revelation 13, you're going to command the whole world to set up an image of the beast on the pain of death. You can't buy or sell. That's where we're moving into right now. That's that history. This guy, I'm not saying that derogatory. He can't continue very much longer. He's an old guy. So we know we're at the end. This is the last president. Uh, Probation's closing all around us. We're so human that we don't realize the footsteps, but I mean, come on, we just had mass murder in the millions in a man-made epidemic. Okay, that's the kind of things that are going on. The money in this country is being robbed right and left. The leaders of the world are perverted to the maximum, not just sexually, but taking body parts and so on. And the great mass of people, they just go ahead and they go turn their TV on and watch their sports or watch their movies and keep sedated in that fashion, pretend it's not happening. But we don't have that luxury. Probation's closing. There's no way the Lord is opening up these truths about the nearness of the close of probation without finishing it. This is where we're at.
Amen.
Amen, Brother Jeff. You also mentioned we have 4 doors closed, or was it 5? I think it was 5 doors. Well, you'll have to correct me then. But we have 4 doors probation closing. I think we've already had 2 dealing with the Seventh-day Adventist Church and
The
you mentioned,
Democrats.
and the Democrats. Perfect. Would you say that the door closing right before, and we show the door closing for us, but you could also, but it's also called a sealing. I'm assuming it's also, if you don't get the seal, then it's a closed door right before 313 is our waymark that we identify that with right before 313, not at 313.
Yeah, you have to have a decision to say nay before the decree. And someone might
Amen.
argue, well, that's not the decree, that was the Edict of Milan. And I'm saying, I'm sorry, they're all symbols of the Sunday law. You can't close your eyes to the Edict of Milan. You know, the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego could say, well, I'm going to tie my shoe. You know, they always say that and bow down. You can't do that. So you
Right.
have to have already settled in before the Edict of Milan.
And that leaves us with 2 more doors closing, the national Sunday law and the worldwide Sunday law.
No. Yes, but what I'm saying is 2020, the door closed on the Adventist Church and it also closed on the Democrats. And
Amen.
in 2007, Antiochus is going to close the door on the Republican horn of the United States. That's the third door closing.
Okay.
Before that time, I'm making the assumption right now, the door closes on the on the foolish and wise version. The door closes. That's 4. And then the 5th is the nation itself, and that's at the Sunday law. That's 5. And the nation or the government is the beast of Revelation. It's the earth beast. It's the government, and that's what it really is prophetically. When the papacy received a deadly wound in 1798, it didn't cease to be a church of Bible prophecy. Its ability to have a civil government at its beck and call was removed. Okay, the beast, the woman was taken off the beast. The government, the kings that supported her were removed. So the United States, that beast with 2 horns in Revelation 13, it's talking about the government, it's talking about the Constitution, because it's a constitutional government. And that beast has 2 horns, republicanism and Protestantism. And those 2 horns have 2 classes among themselves. And Democrats and the Adventist Church, the former covenant people, close the doors first. Then the Republicans and the virgins close their door. And then at the Sunday law, the beast closes its door. Constitution's fully overturned. It's progressive, but because we are the ones that are the messengers of the midnight cry message, as typified by Samuel Snow, our prophetic message is going to be governed, the waymark's going to be based upon those closed doors. It's part of what establishes our message, is our understanding of the sequence of events in the judgment. That's
And
the
then
closed door message. So there's five, and then you're going to have a closed door when the last Sunday law is fulfilled and human probation closes and Michael stands up. And I suppose on every country after the United States that passes a Sunday law, then there's closed doors there for each of those countries. But primarily, um, I'm talking about the closed doors in the parable of the 10 virgins, and that's in the history of the United States. The midnight cry changes at the Sunday law to the loud cry. So there's a difference. There's a distinction between earth and sea.
and and just one last thing. I know we have the beast enforcing the mark of the beast during the worldwide Sunday law. But can we say that during the national Sunday law that there's an enforcement of the mark of the beast, or even though the beast is not involved at that point, or we don't make that distinction at that point?
In the world Sunday law crisis, according to Revelation 13, verse 13, it's Sister White says that it's Satan that calls fire down out of heaven in verse 13. And that's fine. Symbols have more than one meaning, but the grammar of it tells you that it's the same beast that spoke as a dragon in verse 11 that's in verse 13. The United States is the one that is going to deceive the world into setting up an image of the beast. It's the one that's going to force, however you want to say it, through its economic and military might. That's the image of the beast testing time for the world. The image of the beast testing time for the United States, the one that's going to force the issue, not necessarily be passing the laws, but the one that's going to force the issue is the false prophet. And the false prophet in the history of the United States is Islam. Muhammad is a false prophet. And Islam is going to bring about the financial crisis that brings on the Sunday law in the United States, and Islam is going to be the issue that brings about the martial law and the despotism that's coming. So in the image of the beast testing time in the United States, it's the false prophet that forces through circumstances, the false prophet of Islam, for the United States to set up an image of the beast. But then in the world, image of the beast testing time, it's the false prophet of apostate Protestantism, the United States, that forces the world to do the same. And there are two false prophets. Okay. And you can see those, they don't talk about it, but they're in there. In Revelation 16, you have the beast, the dragon, and the false prophet. Okay, that's Catholicism, spiritualism, apostate Protestantism. It's the Catholic Church, it's the United Nations, it's the United States. But there is also another threefold union in the book of Revelation, although they're not portrayed like they are in Revelation 16. And in Revelation 9, Islam comes out of the bottomless pit. And in Revelation 11, atheism, the dragon, comes out of the bottomless pit. And in Revelation 17, the beast that's the eighth of the seven comes out of the bottomless pit. So there you have the beast out of the bottomless pit, the dragon, and the false prophet. The difference between those two threefold entities is the false prophet in the world testing time is the United States, and the false prophet in the testing time in the United States is Islam. And this is one of the reasons that you can identify that Islam is going to strike Nashville. I mean, you got to grapple with this if you're going to give your clear message, and it's this. It's okay if you have perfect confidence in Sister White to say, Sister White clearly says here, Nashville's going to get hit by balls of fire, and it's going to cause this accusation about you knew, why didn't you warn us? But the balls of fire doesn't have, there's no way you can determine where those balls of fire are coming from Islam or anywhere else. Ellen White doesn't give that information. So you're required to go in and show why you're claiming that the balls of fire are Islam. And the way that you do that is you show that this whole history, it has a theme, just like the Millerite movement had a theme, just like the Reform movement of Christ had a theme, just like the Reform movement illustrated by David, bringing the ark into Jerusalem, had a theme. Uh, so when you go back to the various Reform movements, the Reform movement of Moses, they always had a theme that ran through their whole history. Okay, the theme of Christ was Messiah. The theme of the Millerite history was time prophecy. And the theme of our history is Islam. It is the subject that permeates our history, so much so that the false prophet Balaam rides through this history on the ass of Islam. I mean, it's just so when you get to the dilemma of identifying Nashville, you have to say, why is it that you're accusing Islam of making this strike? And you need to understand that the role of Islam as a false prophet is in agreement with the role of the United States as a false prophet, both in image of the beast testing times, two false prophets. But in Revelation 13:13, it's clearly the United States false prophet that forces the world to set up the image of the beast, and therefore reading backwards into the image of the beast testing time in the United States, it has to be the false prophet that forces the circumstances that lead to the setting up of the image of the beast, the Sunday law, the whole 9 yards. And that's a logic that I don't even know what you said that I was answering. I'm sorry, I'm getting tired.
No. You're doing wonderful. I said that was going to be my last question, but since you brought up Islam, we were having a discussion and also on from last night's Bible studies and what's going on with Iran and I was and among others in our Bible study were pointing out that we're dealing with Persians historically, and of course, and something like that. How would that unite Islam or radical Islam, to be more exact? Especially when we consider we probably have a lot of sleeper cells with Biden's open border policy, and what would strike them to unite and attack. And then we would look again at Ellen White's prophecy about Nashville, and then following Nashville, more cities go, just like soon after, I imagine. And I dismissed the idea because you got the Shiites, Kurds, and Larry might help me out with the third one. I forgot
Sunnis.
already. Sheena, what is it, Larry?
Sunnis.
Huh?
Sunnis, S-U-N-I.
Sunni, yeah, Sunni. Sorry. And then of course we had some smaller sects out there, but it's kind of like you said. We need to point out Nashville, and then we need to be able to say, well, how do we make the connection to Islam? And I would say that one further, how do we show that what's going to unite Islam, if we have that knowledge, and what one of that possibilities to unite radical Islam would be, in my mind, that they have Friday, we have the seventh day, Saturday, Sabbath, and the whole world is trying to move towards Sunday. That would unify, in my mind, Islam to strike. And as you said, just before the Sunday law, which any like the edict of I'll mispronounce it, but
Milan.
yes, thank you. We have all these things happening, and it just seems to me, if we're not close to being able to identify what unites Islam, I think we'll be able to figure it out soon.
I don't know that they need to be united.
Mm, okay.
They're one of their main symbols is that they're locusts, and you can see that they've spread out all over the world now. We went
Yeah.
to Jamaica a few times, 2 or 3 times, I forget, and had meetings down there. And even when I didn't go, we supported meetings down there. But when I was down there, the brethren that were coming to meetings were already pointing out in there's two main towns, and I forget which one it was on one side of the island, the other. They had a mosque there, and they were already uh, making inroads in Jamaica. I mean, they're that is their characteristic is like locusts. They've spread out. I mean, Europe's crumbling at its knees because of Islam. But in Genesis 16:12, it says, "And his spirit will dwell with all his brethren." Um, there's Muslim brethren in the world that aren't radical Islams. They're multi-billionaire uh, people that could probably secure some pretty sophisticated military hardware. And the spirit of Ishmael is as much in them as in someone living in a cave serving Al Qaeda, according to Genesis 16:12. So surprise attack doesn't have to come from someone living in a cave in Afghanistan. It's just got to come from Islam.
I agree.
Saudi Arabia, Qatar. I don't know all those countries in terms of wealth, but some of
It's
them.
it's still a false religion, so anyone who believes it, they're all gonna obviously act a certain way, whether they're rich or not. And
You, you,
I know Jesus is controlling Islam, but still, I think that pretty much all Muslims are the same. They are just trying to push their agenda, and that yeah. I know the Lord will save a lot of them, but until they, repent and accept Jesus, they're all going to continue to believe what they believe
Yeah,
and enforce their
I
beliefs
think
in
that
other.
if you recognize that Muhammad literally made the point that you either convert to Islam or you're dead, I think that's what's going to unite them.
Right,
Mm.
exactly.
you've heard of my blown up gas stations idea, right?
We
Hey,
need
hey,
to
hey, Pat, you need to
wrap
quit
this
while
up.
you're ahead.
But Jeff, Daniel has a question, and after Daniel, we'll just end the Zoom.
Okay.
That way you can get some rest.
Okay, two questions. One kind of related to what John was talking about a moment ago. As I've been uh, observing what's going on there between the U.S. and Iran, you have Russia out there. Wouldn't there be a connection between, and I'm not sure exactly how to say this. Russia is going to be soon victorious, um, but wouldn't there be a connection between this war in Iran and Russia? And I was also thinking that I mean I would be surprised if Russia did not take advantage of this preoccupation of the U.S. there in Iran and go ahead and finish the job there in Ukraine. So that's one question. I'll wait for your response.
What's the question? I didn't get the question.
Yeah. Um, wouldn't okay, this war there in between the U.S. and Iran, wouldn't that involve what we're expecting in the victory between the victory of Russia over the U.S. the Battle of the Penium. Oh, I always get Penium and Raffia mixed
Raffia.
up. Yeah, Raffia. The initial
I don't know. I
that
don't see
victory
a
of
connection
of
between
Russia.
it. I think the Ukrainian war is the Battle of Raffia, and it's between Russia and the Ukraine, although the
Okay.
United States is financing it without a doubt, and the United States started it.
Okay.
So
Yep.
can I interject something here? I think what Daniel's trying to get at is that if we are diverting our attention to Iran, that means we can't really manage all these things that are going on logistically. And so that leaves an open door for Russia to finish its work in the Ukraine and us not pay as much attention as we would had we not been in this war with Iran. Is that how you're explaining it, Daniel?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe so, but do you? I don't pay attention to these things, but I always figured Russia can end that war anytime it wants. I mean,
Yeah.
why haven't they just went
Yeah.
in and cleaned up house? It's just a little tiny country compared to them.
So if Russia was
Yeah.
involved today or tomorrow, sorry to interrupt. If Russia got involved today or tomorrow, would that be the start of Panium? Like World War III?
Russia has already been giving Iran information about where to bomb, and
Yeah.
so has China.
Yeah, I heard that.
but I haven't been paying attention to that, so I'm sure that everything you guys are saying is correct. But in verse the king of North returns said multigrain. There's a question I want to throw at you. Verse 15, so the king of the north shall come, this is Paneum, and cast up a mountain, take the most fenced cities. He's going to defeat Russia, defeat Egypt, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. Russia isn't going to have the strength to withstand in the battle of Paneum, but Russia has a chosen people. And I know that Russia has some problems with Islam, like everyone does, but I've often wondered if maybe they end up being the chosen people. There's some kind of ally there that's referenced uh, on Russia's side of things in the Battle of Paneum. They don't prevail, but I don't think Trump's going to. This is where I haven't been paying attention. I don't think Trump's going to get into a quagmire in Iran. I think this is part of the Golden Age movement. He's cleaning up the world. They're saying, not that in how many days it's been since he took out Venezuela and now he's taken out Iran. Those were China's two main supporters. He's playing a big game. He's not just going into Iran. He's shutting off China at the same time without even dealing with China. Uh, I think that's the kind of momentum he has to have to become the leader of the 10 kings. And why I'm saying that is based upon the principle that a dictator that's effective has the majority of the people with him. I think a lot of the world is going to stand with him when he begins commanding the world to set up an image of the beast. And in order for that to happen, he's got to win some hearts and minds. And what is it now? He's stopped 7 or 8 wars since he took office, and he's just taken out his enemies in a pretty straightforward fashion. Um, anyway, you guys have been paying
Okay.
attention to it more than I.
The, the other question I had is not related to this at all, not directly, at least anyway, in my mind. Um, I was thinking about this. Okay, so uh, the number 40, is there a symbolic 40 that you can think of right offhand in our movement or in all the lines that you have placed? The reason why I'm asking that question, because I was thinking a while ago, we're expecting this attack of Islam upon uh, Nashville. And I was remembering the study that I did on the book of Jonah some few years ago. And there is a statement, I believe I'm almost sure it's in Prophets and Kings. I'll go through it on the computer right now, where Sister White says that after that disappointment there that Jonah experienced there concerning the destruction of Nineveh, 40 years later, Nineveh was destroyed. So you understand what I'm saying? Why I'm asking, is there a symbolic 40 that would go from July 18th to 20?
Well, the 40 is like I don't know. I don't have one of those in my mind, but I know how I understand 40, at least partially. 40's, 40 means more than one thing, but one thing it means is fourth generation. So yeah, the fourth generation is marked in this history because that's when he brings judgment. But 40 is also a wilderness, and it's a fast. So you understand what I mean by a wilderness is Christ went into the wilderness for 40 days, and the ancient Israel was wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. So that's two witnesses of 40 days, a day for a year, that 40 represents a wilderness. So a wilderness is also a 1260.
Yeah.
From the disappointment until December 31st. I don't, I'm only thinking out loud because you asked that question. It's the final generation. That's a 4. I don't know.
Don't you have 40 years between the first 3 kings, bringing you to the division of the north and the south?
Was it 40 years?
Yeah, so from Saul to David to Solomon, there's 40 years between each one, 120 years. That's we get one of the 120s.
Oh, yeah. So
and that brings us
a reign of a king.
Right, and the dividing of the nations with Jeroboam and Rehoboam.
Yeah.
In 966, I think, is when that is. But so there's some 40s there too.
Yeah, I'd say the 4 abominations in Ezekiel 8 are a 42.
Yeah, there's a couple.
So it's a really complex symbol, and I can't help you, Daniel.
Jesus' ministry, 40 days in the wilderness.
How about change of dispensation? And you also have that 40 years connected to 1260, which is connected to 3.5 days, which is connected to July 18 to December 21, 2023. So I see it all.
Yeah, it definitely is a change of dispensation, too.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, you're kind of breaking up.
Okay. I don't know what happened. We were disconnected here. Can anyone hear me?
You're echoing to me.
Or you're in and out.
Okay.
And Jeff, do you want to close out with prayer?
Heavenly Father, we once again lift up Sister Vicky, the family, and all of us around the world that are having our different crises at this time. We know that you're about ready to lift up the ensign that'll be identified by their patience and that tribulation work is patience, and we're in that time period. We thank you for the study today. We ask that you continue to open your word and get us to the place where we can give a faithful warning to people that have time to respond and get prepared before this crisis hits. Thank you, and I ask that you bring us back together according to your will next Sabbath. In Jesus' name, amen.